It's time for the Daily Planet podcast show. So sit back, relax, and give us a go. Scott and Matt and maybe a guest have undertaken an epic pod quest. We're gonna ramble on about movies and books and television and directors and film festivals and this really long list of stuff that I know nothing about, but they gave it to me and they really wanted me to read through it. And that's all I can really say about it, but it's gonna be great. Okay, start the show.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Planet podcast, your weekly podcast for all things movies, TV, books, and anything else we feel like talking about. My name is Scott Daly and I'm your host. And I'm joined by my co-host, Matt Freeman. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Scott, and I'm really excited to be talking about our favorite worst movies in the world, video game movies.
That's right. Warcraft is coming out on June 10th, this coming Friday, and we thought it would be a great time to talk about video game movies. And we brought frequent podcast guest Michael Grubb here to talk about some video game movies.
Hello, y'all.
How's it going, Michael?
Pretty good. Video games notoriously have the best thought out stories, and so it only makes sense to make movies out of them.
That's absolutely true, says people in Hollywood that have ended up losing money time and time again.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had this idea, and Michael, this was actually your idea, to do kind of a movie battle thing that I'm tentatively calling The World's Finest, which is another comic book reference because I'm out of control.
I'm calling it movie fight.
Well, you can call it whatever you would like to.
Matt, what are you calling it?
Movie combat.
This is disappointing, Matt. You're supposed to be on my side.
Oh, well, I mean, my combat has a K, though, so I thought you'd understand.
I actually got that from the way you pronounced it.
That's impossible.
No, I got it.
All right. So the whole idea was we pick a theme, and then each one of us picks a movie that best represents that theme, and then we come here and argue for our case. I think it's ironic that we're trying to pick the best of one of the worst genres of film that exists.
Right.
Scott, when you suggested this topic to me, I pulled up a list of video game movies online, and I was just like astounded at how awful all of them were.
Yeah, it's funny because that's like a known fact that video game movies are bad, right? Like most everyone knows that, but it's different from just knowing it and then pulling up a list and seeing them all there in front of you.
And there's been loads, but they're all bad.
All of them. All of them are bad.
Yeah, you would think you could find one where you're like, oh, well, yeah, that one, though. I mean, everyone kind of likes that one, but no, there's zero.
Right. And I don't want to use like Rotten Tomatoes as the end-all be-all barometer of things, but the highest rated video game movie on Rotten Tomatoes is at 43%. So no video game movie has ever been fresh on their Rotten Tomatoes scale.
Is that the Final Fantasy movie?
It is. It is the Final Fantasy movie.
See, that's the only one that that like anyone ever enjoyed, ever.
No one enjoyed it, though. It's just that they enjoyed Final Fantasy so much that they were like, oh, there's a character named Sid. Thumbs up.
I guess.
Oh, well, we will see. Because what we have each done is picked our movie, and now we're going to argue it. And spoilers, Final Fantasy The Spirits Within is my movie. It is the movie I am declaring as the greatest video game movie ever, which is like being the best in a pile of shit. But,
well.
So that's my movie, but I want to start with our guest. Michael,
okay.
I want you to go first, and you to, I guess, say your movie and then maybe summarize it a little bit for us.
Okay, so the movie I chose is Silent Hill, which is a movie based off of a horror video game series where essentially a woman has a adopted daughter who's always kind of like going a bit like sleepwalking and being a bit weird when she sleeps, talking about a town called Silent Hill in Virginia, and they go there and they're kind of transported to this weird alternate dimension full of really terrifying, characters and like culty stuff. And that's the movie. And I picked it because I think of all of the video game movies, it is the most not groan inducing. It actually kind of has an air of like serious movie to it. Like it could have been a movie without having the video game franchise behind it. It is actually pretty creepy. It's got a good soundtrack. Like, it actually has a good soundtrack. So that's like at least one good thing about it. The special effects are good. Probably like a lot of video game movies. That's really all they ever get right. But yeah, just because it's like the only video game movie I could think of that like felt like a real movie.
Yeah, that's fair. It's been a long time since I've seen this movie, but I remember it actually, at least tonally and atmosphere, um, feeling very much like the game. And I think I've only played one of the Silent Hill games,
Yeah.
Silent Hill 2, but it looked and felt very much similar to the game. So if we're judging on a scale of how close to the video game this is supposed to represent, was it? I think this one did a very good job, for sure.
Yeah.
I do think, and it has been a while since I've seen it. I read the plot summary online before this because I couldn't find some place to watch it, and it seems like they tried to throw little bits and pieces from every Silent Hill game in it.
Yeah, it wasn't really following one Silent Hill game. I think the whole like adopted stepchild thing was from the first one, although the main character of the first one was a man and not a woman, like in the movie.
Right.
So yeah, it's kind of. I mean, all of the games are very kind of similar, but
yeah, and then but then Sean Bean's character was, I think, the main character from Silent Hill 2, and he's kind of just like there, like his whole.
Well, he's there to show. So while the main character, whose name is what is her name?
It's your movie.
Rose. Yeah, Rose. So Rose and her adopted daughter Sharon. Her husband is Sean Bean, and he is in the real world, while Rose and Sharon are in like the weird, creepy version of Silent Hill with the mist and the smoke. He's in like the real version, and he's just kind of to show that something weird is happening. And then like the kind of cool ending, actually, like it actually has like a real ending, I would say, for a movie. Where you think that Rose and her daughter have like gotten home and are like safe now and escaped Silent Hill. But they get there and like the house is empty and like it's raining. But then they show the husband and like it's sunny and he's in the same house. And it shows that like at the end, they're actually still trapped in Silent Hill and they haven't gotten home. So that's kind of like, he's just kind of like to ground the story to like show you that like there's a real world and Rose and Sharon are trapped in like this crazy one.
Yeah, but I just thought his inclusion was because besides that, he doesn't really have anything to do. He just kind of shows up.
No, he's not really a main character.
Yeah, is told to leave and then just leaves, and then that's really all he does.
Yeah,
but the movie actually makes sense and is really horrifying and tense and extremely disturbing in places. I recall, especially toward the end.
And there's a couple things I want to point out about the tension in this movie. And so I think one failing of a lot of movies in general, actually, superhero movies fall victim to this, and definitely most video game movies, is like the scale of the conflict is like too big. It's like saving the world from something, and it's like so big it's hard to like care about on a personal level. But the conflict in this movie is that they get to this weird world, and then Rose wakes up and her daughter's missing, and she's trying to find her daughter. And so that's just like her own personal. She's like alone in this struggle, at least initially, and that is more of a real, like, you can emphasize with that, and you're like, you can be afraid for that with her. Like all she's trying to do is find her daughter, so it's a lot more personal than like fighting some big, world-ending monster or something.
Yeah, I agree. And it is a fairly good movie. I think it kind of loses me as stuff is revealed, as what's actually going on is revealed, and we're dealing with like demon possessions and alternate universes and like a weird cult. I think that's when it starts to lose me. It almost like gets convoluted.
They explain a lot in this movie.
They over-explain, I think.
Unnecessarily, but the main structure, like, she kind of basically, like, every time the siren goes off and shit's about to get crazy in Silent Hill, and you kind of learn to be afraid when it goes off, just like she does. But like every time it goes off, she's like in a different place in the town looking for her daughter, and it's kind of like a video game level, which
Yeah.
is it's kind of cool. They actually tie that in and it works, unlike a lot of video game movies, which like try to make it seem really video gamey, but you just kind of like, why this doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it's one of the few movies where the video game mechanic actually makes the movie watcher feel
right.
the way you feel
And
in the game.
horror movies slash video games are actually a pretty good way to tie that together, because you can use a lot of the same sort of tricks, I think.
Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
agree with that.
Unlike like a shooter or something, which is just like, why would you even try to make a movie off of that concept? There's no story to begin with. But so yeah, so it kind of does that, and then there's this weird, not quite the very end, but kind of the climax of the movie, where there's like the cult has kidnapped the daughter, and then there's like this demon child version of the daughter, and she like rapes the cult people with chains, and you're just kind of like, why is this happening? And it is like incredibly disturbing and gross, but like it's not really the same kind of tension that made the rest of the movie effective.
Yeah, but I will say that the one of the strengths of Silent Hill has been the creature designs, and
Yeah.
I think the movie nails that pretty well. The I think the Pyramid Head guys, like, it's this ridiculous concept in the game. Like, this guy that they're called Pyramid Heads because they literally have a giant pyramid for a head, and how do you translate that into the real world and to make it look creepy and not just ridiculous and stupid? And I think the movie does do a very good job at translating those designs.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, isn't he like dragging a giant like cleaver around or something? Yeah, it's pretty effective at being horror. I will gladly grant that.
Yeah, in fact, I would say, I mean, I don't actually like horror movies as a rule. But as far as horror movies go, this would actually be up there, like in terms of effective horror movies for me.
Oh, wow. Well, I understand why you nominated it then. I love horror movies, and this would not be one of my favorites. But
yeah, well, I mean, maybe I just don't like. I think the reason I like it is because it kind of has an interesting, appealing, creepy aesthetic instead of just like a random like the Shining or something, like crazy guy with an axe, or like some other random like Scream type murdery thing. It's kind of like a weird, you're transported to this other world and you're not sure how real it is, and there's like these uniquely creepy things like Pyramid Head and so forth.
yeah, I mean, I think the set design, the tone, all the monster designs, and the direction in this movie are pretty good. I just think the script is kind of, and some of the dialogue, if I'm remembering correctly, is not great and pretty cheesy, which is funny because that's like the same problem that I think a lot of video games have, is that they can design this beautiful, effective game and then the story sucks.
Yeah. Michael, isn't like all the scary, creepy stuff, isn't it basically like this is all sort of projections or manifestations of the traumas of the little girl? So like the things are creepy and you don't even necessarily realize why they're creepy, but then later you realize it's like, oh, this is because this is like a projection of this person who was torturing the girl in this particular way, and then you can see that you can see that manifesting in the monster, whatever it is something like that.
So that's true. I don't remember if I think a lot of it is directly with like the sort of previous version of the daughter who's named like Alessa, who was a girl who was like burned for being a witch or something. Can't remember exactly, by the townsfolk. So a lot of it has to do with that, and just like the kind of dark history of the town in general. So it is good, I think, that it's not just like random horror stuff. It's
Right.
kind of it's all kind of like tied around like the perversion of what happened to this like West Virginian kind of town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it makes the monsters more compelling than like Hellraiser or whatever, where it's just obviously like random gross out stuff. It's like it is sort of gross out stuff, but it's also there's a reason behind it. It's I don't know, that appeals to me aesthetically more than just random gross out stuff, I guess.
Right. I think I definitely agree with that. So anyway, for those reasons, I think Silent Hill seems the most like they put thought into making it like a real film. and that's why I've selected it.
Okay. So before we move on, what would you think is the theme of this movie? Because that's something I struggled with Silent Hill, is I'm not sure what it was about.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know. In terms of like a moral theme,
Well, not necessarily needs to be like a moral theme, but I mean, there's stuff with adoption in there, and there's stuff with childhood trauma, but I don't know if the movie is saying anything, which it doesn't necessarily have to.
There's an element of justice, some sense of justice, even if it's a horrifying form of justice, where, you know, I don't remember the details of the plot exactly, but basically like there's some version of this girl's soul is basically being like trapped and tortured, and the end is that she basically gets this horrific revenge against these awful people who are, you know, basically demons in the first place, but they're started out as humans anyway. I don't know. I don't remember exactly, but it's...
another possible message is kind of ambiguous, whether this is some sort of like purgatory or thing in her mind or something, because they stumble into the Silent Hill world when she has a car accident, and then she wakes up in this kind of demon world. And so I don't know, there's just kind of that, I guess.
Yeah, I think my interpretation was that they died in the car crash.
Yeah. So I don't know, it's kind of thought-provoking, I guess, that it doesn't have a lot to do with like the main character's kind of like psychology. The main character in the movie, much like the games, is not characterized a ton so that you can sort of be that person.
Gotcha.
But I think the movie's just kind of exploring, I don't know, different things for different people. Maybe like just kind of like the experiencing the horror of like having an adopted daughter you think there might be something wrong with, and then losing her and trying to find her, and then I don't know, the ending doesn't really bring all that together, I guess. But I it's hard to identify a theme. You're right.
Yeah.
It feels like a literal nightmare. Like the idea of it, of like, oh, I've lost someone and now I'm trying to find them, and now all these horrible things are impeding me. Like that's the script of nightmares that I've had, basically. So
that's a good point. And a lot of the kind of direction of the movie is kind of around that, and you kind of like go into the various specific nightmares when the sirens go off and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. There was a sequel to this movie. It made enough money to deserve a sequel. Did you ever see that?
No. Was it released in theaters?
I think so. It did not do very well. It bombed, and it was pretty universally panned as well. This movie did okay as far as critical analysis. Like I said, I think most critics agreed that they really liked the aesthetic of the movie, but the story wasn't great. But yeah, I think it's Silent Hill Revelations was the sequel. I never saw it. I don't think. I might have seen it like late one night on a movie channel or something, because I think these movies play on them all the time. But yeah, I mean, I don't remember hating this movie, so that's pretty positive when we're talking video game movies.
Yeah, though the bar is definitely low.
So Matt, are you ready to present your movie?
Speaking of low bars, my movie is the classic Mortal Kombat, which I am bringing up for entirely different reasons than Michael brings up his, because his is actually a good movie. But Mortal Kombat is just, I would argue, just a great stab at adapting just a delightfully nonsense game. Because Mortal Kombat the game is just like a 2-player side-scrolling fighting game, and it only had the barest gesture at like a story where you get all these fighters from Earth have to defend the realm of Earth against interdimensional demons who are trying to invade and take over Earth, and it's silly and ridiculous, but the movie makes this great effort at at telling the story and having a kind of a tongue-in-cheek, I don't know, 90s era sense of humor about it, where there's all this like winking at the audience about how silly this is and how ridiculous it is. And then of course built into the movie you have all these fights, which are the one-on-one fights against the characters, just like you have in the game. Um, and then it all culminates in the main character fighting the main bad guy. But I think it actually does a serviceable job of like ramping up the threats and sort of throwing in small twists even, and having a really good like story for the main characters, even though they're terribly acted. um like it's I'm really only bringing this movie because I loved this movie when I was a kid, and I liked the Mortal Kombat games, and I watched this movie again recently, and it was pretty awful. Um, but I think the phenomenon of video game movies is cool, especially when they try to make a video game movie out of a video game that does not deserve to have a movie made out of it, like Mortal Kombat. And then they actually try to do a good job. Like they did, there's some pretty cool art direction in this movie. You can say that for it. Um, I'm gonna stop now. And
Yeah. So I think the cool thing about this movie, and you are right, this is a terrible movie, but I think a lot of times video game movies get kind of trapped in that there's so many different things they have to do because there's defined characters within the world of the game that they feel like they have to stay true to, or else why not just make a completely different movie? But this, yeah, Mortal Kombat's a fighting game. There's no story basically. There's no character stuff at all. So the movie basically invents characters. I mean, they're as they exist in the game, but they invent character backstories and character motivations, and they're all very simple and simplistic motivations. But I think that works to what the movie's trying to do. I think you have
Johnny Cage.
Johnny Cage, who's just like a fake martial artist, or actually a real martial artist that everyone think is a fake martial artist because he's a sellout and
Yeah.
makes movies. You have Sonya, who's trying to avenge her partner, and then you have, what is his name? What's the main
Liu Kang.
character? There we go.
Liu Kang is trying to avenge his brother.
Right. And then you have Raiden in the middle of it, who is like deliciously chewing scenery. Like
Yes.
he's absurd, and he's awful. Like it's a terrible performance. But it also
Yeah.
like he's. I think both he and the movie are aware it's a terrible performance, and it's
Right.
like going for a certain level of camp. And
Yes, that's correct. If it didn't have the camp aspect, it would be irredeemable. But it's got aspects like Scorpion and Sub-Zero, which are amazing when you're 10. Where there's just like these masked ninjas who are really formidable, and I don't know, maybe that doesn't translate anymore. But
I will say that the camp and the kind of pomp and circumstance of everything is kind of ruined by the ending. I think at some point the movie stops being like fun jaunt and turns into this super serious finale. Like with, I think, aren't they fighting on top of like steps, and don't they do their bestiality things or whatever, where one of them turns into a dragon and the other in awful CG, like terrible.
I think you may be remembering the sequel.
Oh god, it's possible.
But in this movie, the ending is just so the bad guy Shang Tsung has absorbed the souls of everyone who he's ever killed, and he like can transform into them and use their powers. So as he's fighting Liu Kang, he transforms into Liu Kang's brother, who he killed, just to basically taunt him. And he's like sort of wearing Liu Kang down, and Liu Kang, heroically shoots him with a chi blast or whatever, and he falls and gets impaled, and then his brother's soul is freed, and that's how it ends. It's not that terrible. I guess the very last scene is like just a god ripping through a temple, and it's just like a silly stinger ending that's supposed to be campy and just be like, oh, is there going to be a sequel? But it's not.
It's not something you should have ever made a sequel off of, because it's just for fun.
And the CG is so terrible. Like there's the reptile.
Oh yeah.
It just looks like it looks like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It's like drawn in.
But at the same time, I think the Goro CG works because he looks campy and ridiculous.
Yeah,
Whereas
I'm
the
not
reptile just doesn't work.
I think aspects of I think the Goro is actually pretty good special effects. I'm pretty sure some of it
It's practical.
is
Yeah,
practical,
you might
and
be
it
right.
mixes. And I don't know, maybe it doesn't come off well, and I'm just misremembering it. But I seem to remember it actually looking pretty good.
I remember 2 lines from this movie, and one of them is, "Those were
Five,
$5,000 sunglasses," or however
yeah,
much the price was.
yeah,
It doesn't matter.
yeah. And then he beats up Goro.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, I don't know. Like, this isn't a good movie by any stretch of the imagination, but I kind of see where you're coming from. I think I don't think it's trying to really be a good movie. I think the thing that it had going for it was that song, which was, I think, can we say the most popular video game song in a movie ever? Like,
Yeah,
I think that was on the number one on a lot of charts for a very long time after that movie came out. And I think most people in the world, or at least in America, even if they haven't seen this movie, will hear that song and know exactly what it is. So that's pretty impactful.
yeah.
Michael, do you have anything to say about this movie?
Well, I'll just say that I saw this movie for the first time when I was older than you were, probably in like college or something. And it's just the worst. I have nothing good to say about it. Like I don't like campy movies. There's nothing like appealing about that, or like there's no fondness in my mind for like campy movies. And so all I saw was just like I was completely aware I was watching a bad movie the whole time. Acting was terrible, the story was terrible, everything was terrible.
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting case study on nostalgia, if anything, because I'm still thinking about it fondly, while fully realizing that if I had seen it for the first time today, I would just turn it off after 5 minutes.
Yeah, and I didn't even have the benefit of like appreciating the source content. I always hated the Mortal Kombat games, so there was nothing appealing for me.
I will say that like Michael's movie, this also had a sequel, plus maybe another one,
Yeah, I think it had at least two.
and they were dreadful.
Yeah,
Like, as bad as the Mortal Kombat was, the second one was infinitely worse.
yeah. The first one was actually an attempt to make a movie. The second one was just awful.
It was
Yeah.
so bad. Yeah, so I don't know if there's anything else to talk about Mortal Kombat. I wish we could just play the music, but we'd probably get in trouble for
Yeah.
copyright.
No, there's nothing else to talk about.
All right. Now we're going to move on to mine, which is Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. And I want to take you guys back. I want to take you back
Take me back,
to
Scott.
the year 2000,
I remember it like it was yesterday.
when a little company called Squaresoft was on top of the world in the world of video games. Final Fantasy VII was one of the highest selling video games of all time at that point. Final Fantasy VIII did very well too. All their games were selling well. They were heralded as pushing the envelope as far as what computer graphics and video games could do. And this company decided to create a production studio, and they named it Square Pictures. And they said, "We're the best at telling stories in the world of video games." They weren't. But we want to do it in movies as well. And we want to do computer animated movies because we think we have the ability to make some of the best looking computer graphics ever. So Square Pictures decided to make a movie, and of course they named it Final Fantasy because that's their flagship video game series. And the movie has nothing to do with any Final Fantasy game that was released.
It does have a character named Sid.
It does. It does have a character named Sid. It has a lot of kind of themes and overall plot structuring to it that's very similar. That's pulling some stuff from Final Fantasy VII and some stuff from some of the other movies. So the reason I picked this movie is, first of all, I don't think it's a bad movie. I think a lot of the negative reaction to this movie was around, first of all, that the fact that Square was going all over the place bragging about how good this movie was going to look. I don't know if you guys remember the advertisements that were going on when this movie was coming out, but they were making statements like the CG will look so good that you'll think it's real. They were trying to make their main character Aki like treating her like a person. Like I think that character was on like Maxim's Hot 100 list for the year or something ridiculous like that. And they tried to market this as look how amazing this movie's going to look. And the movie looked good for its time, but technology was not there to make photorealistic looking CG yet. It just wasn't there. So
and plus, that's never going to make a good movie. Like, there's lots of movies that try to ride on special effects, and that's never what's good about them if they're considered
well, no,
good.
I think they, from a marketing perspective, they were hoping to ride on special effects, but I do think they've created with this movie an interesting world and an interesting story. Quick sum up: the movie takes place in a sci-fi dystopian future where this meteorite has landed on Earth, and some weird alien monsters called phantoms have come out of it that are basically like can pass through anything, and if they touch you, they kill you. They remove your soul basically, and you die. They're invisible to the naked eye, and they basically take over the entire planet. And people live in these little barrier cities around the world. And there's a doctor named Sid and his apprentice, I guess, the main character named Aki, who believe that the phantoms are just energy waves, and if they can collect life that has an energy wave that is an exact opposite of that, they will cancel each other out, thus killing all the phantoms, which is nonsense science stuff that doesn't really make any sense. But they go around collecting these energy waves, and that's the overall plot of the movie. So I watched this again recently, and I was really curious because I didn't love it when I first saw it. I didn't hate it either, and I still don't think it's like a great movie. But I understand why it is the best reviewed of these movies. I think it does construct interesting characters. I think the character of Aki is really interesting. I think the most interesting character is the villain, General Hein, who's played by James Woods.
I was just gonna say that, like that was the most dramatically compelling part for me, was when he like goes insane and starts trying to shoot things with the orbital space station.
Well, yeah, there's a scene where after he's let the phantoms into the New York barrier city to prove a point, and they basically take over and destroy the entire city. There's this scene when he's sitting in a spaceship and he's like holding a gun and he's ready to kill himself, and then right before he does it at the last minute, he decides, no, I have to continue fighting. And there's a real, like, that character has real, like, emotional depth, and it definitely like provides his motivation. He lost his entire family, and he's not a villain in the traditional sense. He just honestly thinks what he's doing is the right thing to do, and of course it isn't. He's the antagonist. It's in direct opposition of what our main characters are trying to do. But I like that they took the time to develop this really interesting character. And James Woods, out of all these people, there was a lot of pretty famous actors involved in this. Donald Sutherland was Sid. Alec Baldwin was Gray, the romantic love interest of the main character. Steve Buscemi was in it. But I think James Woods' performance was really well done in this movie.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny because before you even got to talking about that, I was thinking about that character and how that's almost the thing that stuck with me the most out of everything in the movie is the scene, any scene that he's in, even like his monologue about how his family died. I can like remember that. I can't remember anything else about this movie. Good. Just to back up to what you were saying about the special effects, like I think the special effects for everything except the human faces was probably more than adequate. It's just the human faces were so plastic that was almost enough to offset everything else, because it's like, yeah, it's a dramatic movie, it's all driven on facial expressions, and they didn't have that down, and that was really what did him in. I think
you're absolutely right. I think you can kind of tell there's like Dr. Sid is one of the last characters they rendered, and his is the only face that I think works in any kind of sense. Any of the other faces, you're right, are absolutely plastic. I think some of the movement is a little floaty too. I don't think they had the physics down yet to make things look like they had a lot of weight.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost, and I hate saying this phrase, ahead of its time, but it's not that I think the movie was ahead of its time, it's I think they were trying to do something that the technology just wasn't there to do. Like, I remember something like they rented like an entire data center to power and render this movie. Like, that's why this movie failed so much, because they spent so much money trying to get the CG where they wanted it to, so they could tell this dramatic story, and I just don't think it was there yet.
Yeah,
Like we saw, like this is right around. This is a couple years after the first Toy Story came out, and that movie benefited by not trying not trying to be photorealistic, and B, just avoided doing human faces.
yeah.
And just stuck with toys.
I mean, Pixar still doesn't try to do real human faces, and
Yeah.
and they probably could, but then it's it was a lesson that they hadn't learned yet, and I kind of admire them for trying it. Actually, I think it would have worked really well as like a cartoon.
Yeah.
Because the story is, like you said, the story is not bad. It's not the most amazing thing ever, but it's somewhat original. I mean,
I think it's. I mean, I think it is bad. I think it is. It could definitely be straight out of a video game, like a Final Fantasy type video game. But it's not adapted well to film, I don't think. I mean, I appreciate, like you guys said, the fact that the villain is actually kind of human in motivation and so forth is always something I appreciate in villains. I hate it when villains are just kind of like, I'm going to take over the world for no reason. That's fine. But the whole like collecting spirits and stuff is like video game levels, but it's not really connected to anything. It's just like these are like the things that they need to accomplish to get to the next bit of whatever happens in the movie.
Yeah, but I feel like that's well defined. I mean, like, they only show us collect 3 of them. The movie opens on her collecting 1. They have the Act 2 action scene is caused by them going out into the wastes and collecting the 2nd. And then all this bad shit happens. And then they're basically like, go for broke. We have to get the last one or we're going to die. And it just so happens to be, because it's a movie, in the actual alien crater itself. I don't know. I mean, I agree the story is not like phenomenal. But I don't think it's bad. I think it's better written than a lot of the Final Fantasy game stories, which I used to love as a kid, but now as an adult that can better examine and appreciate stories, I realize have a ton of problems in them.
Yeah, and I don't want to back out of talking about this movie in particular, but it is interesting that the 3 movies that we've picked hearken to 3 pretty different kinds of video games, and there's vastly more different kinds of video games too. But like,
right,
Michael's was a third person horror like shooter basically. I don't even know what you call that, survival horror shooter or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Mortal Kombat is a 2D side scrolling fighting game. I'm sure there's a better word for that.
No, that's right.
And Scott's, the Final Fantasy games in general are RPGs in kind of a vast open world, usually with very large, sprawling, complicated stories. And it's like, yeah, of course you take these three things, which are very different things. You're going to have different challenges trying to make them into an hour and a half long film. You're going to have to make all kinds of decisions about, like, okay, what does it mean to turn Mortal Kombat into a movie? What does it mean to turn Silent Hill into a movie? Like, you have to decide what you're going to keep, what you're going to throw away, what people care about. And I think in some cases, like in Mortal Kombat, it's practically impossible to make a good movie with the material that they're given.
Yeah, and I think the thing about this movie was originally called Gaia. It wasn't even a Final Fantasy movie. Obviously, they stuck the Final Fantasy moniker on it so it would make more money. It didn't work. But I think it does have a lot of similarities to the series on a very like high level, like thematic point of view. Like the whole Gaia theory that the Earth has a spirit and when we die, our spirit returns to the earth, and it allows new things to be born, and you can hurt our planet. That's a very Final Fantasy VII type theme, and I think that the writers of this movie said they wrote it after they lost someone, and so they were trying to like search for what happens after death, and I mean the movie kind of broken down is these alien creatures are actually just ghosts of a dead world. And so they're just angry, confused ghosts. So it's like showing the two different things that can happen when you die. And it's like comparing bad death to unselfish death, which is Alec Baldwin's character at the end sacrifices himself to basically save the world. I don't know. I just like none of these movies are good. Like I'm not arguing that this is a good movie. I'm just arguing that out of this list of movies that we've looked at, I think this one succeeds in what it's trying to do the best. And I think a lot of the negative reaction to this movie was not pointed towards the story or the performances or even the direction. It was kind of the hubris of Square in thinking they could do something that they probably couldn't.
Yeah, I agree that this movie was not groan-inducing like Mortal Kombat and a lot of video game movies like the Resident Evil series and all those. And you're not necessarily like painfully aware you're watching a movie the whole time. My main complaints is just that I felt it was boring and it didn't really have a story worth telling. But it did seem it to have elements of a video game in it that it used to some degree well. And I appreciate the pushes in technology that they tried to do with it.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see if like what they did with this movie had any kind of effect on the CG technology going forward. I feel like it would, because like I'm looking at the Wikipedia article right now. A render farm consisting of 960 workstations was tasked with rendering each of the film's 141,964 frames. Took a staff of 204 years to complete it.
Yeah. They probably did a lot of innovating that was used other places. At least I hope so, because otherwise that's kind of wasteful.
It's complete waste. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will say that out of all their three movies, mine was the only one that did not get a sequel because it bombed so hard that it not only did not warrant a sequel, but the studio that funded it, that was created to fund it, had to declare bankruptcy. Squaresoft, the video game company, also struggled with money for like a decade after this because of this movie. I think their merger with Enix was probably caused by this movie because they needed some extra cash and they needed help. So it definitely was a failure.
Yeah, this all surprises me though, because I remember seeing it for the first time. I mean, I literally remember being in the theater, and like me and all my friends wanted to see it, and we all did, and because I don't know, it's just like, hey, a completely CGI movie, cool. I mean, at that time it was a cool idea. At that time, that by itself was a selling point.
Yeah, so that brings me to I guess it's kind of a tangent, but what would it take for a video game movie to be successful? I think still the most successful video game movie to date is the Tomb Raider movie, which is not a good movie either. I mean, none of us liked it, obviously, because we didn't.
No. But well, I think the reason that all video game movies fail is because they're made for the wrong reasons. They're made because they try to do something similar to like the idea with superhero movies or like all the remakes these days, where it's like you take a brand that already has a following and then you make a movie about it because you know that all of the people who follow it will probably see the movie regardless of whether it's good or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a studio level, you're right. But I think that's the impetus behind a lot of the films that are out there. But I think even though you could still...
It's never a good idea, though.
But you could still make a good film out of it. You could still find people that are willing to put in the work to construct something. I mean, there's still artists that want to put forth
Sure, sure.
Right. It's kind of like how apparently the Goosebumps movie was good.
I saw
You
it.
know,
It was good. I couldn't
yeah,
believe it.
yeah, and it's like that's the thing is if you're clever with how you kind of reinterpret something and make a new story around it, it's like how we were talking about how like if you're gonna make a D&D movie, the only correct way to do it is to make a movie about normal people playing a D&D game, and the drama of the story is like an intertwining thing where it matches up conflicts between the actual people who are playing the game and conflicts that are happening in the game. And
I
you
completely
know,
agree. Yeah.
because like you have to use the medium intelligently
Yeah.
and throw some originality into it, and make your own story with its own artistic thrust. Otherwise it's
Right. I
just going to
mean,
be.
the way video games and films tell stories is completely different. So you can't just like make you know a Tomb Raider movie and without the like immersion of walking around the world and like solving puzzles and discovering places or all of the things in like a video game that are effective. Um, you
Yeah.
can't just like expect that to happen in a movie.
And there's this weird push to translate to movie some very cinematic video games that are they themselves trying to be movies.
Right.
The Uncharted games are a great example because those games are specifically set out to kind of ape a action adventure Indiana Jones type aesthetic. And they are trying to be cinematic. They are trying to be you are playing a Indiana Jones movie. That's the point of those games. And now they're making an Uncharted movie, and I'm like, what is the like that defeats the point.
Right.
Our Indiana Jones already exists. I am like Uncharted because I like experiencing that with and getting to control it. And we're seeing that a lot. Like they're making an Assassin's Creed game now. Um, Warcraft. The reason we're talking about this right now is coming out, and that movie, and I called it a year ago. It got bad reviews, and it's probably going to bomb. And I said that even if every single person that's ever played World of Warcraft sees that movie, it will not be enough for it to be financially successful. Because when you pump $160 million into a movie, it has to appeal to more than just the people that have played the game.
Yeah. And I think I mean it's the same problem. It's like Warcraft is a super popular franchise, so let's make a movie about it. And the the kind of limitations you have with that are not like the helpful for creativity type because you have to kind of use the conflict of the source material, which is basically like a weird otherworldly orc invasion of humanity. And that is like cool from a video game perspective because you just like fight orcs or humans or whatever side you're on.
Mm-hmm.
But like where is like from in a movie you're following like a character's personal struggle and story. It's like it's not that interesting to just like watch a warrior chieftain like do things.
Well, yeah, and they have to balance it, right? So Warcraft, especially, is a movie that's I think going to be balancing Duncan Jones' desire to tell a certain story, which I like Duncan Jones as a director. I've very much enjoyed his past movies, and that's like the only reason I'm interested in this movie. But it has to balance him with all this fan service that you know they're going to have to load this game with because you have all these people that love Warcraft that are going to see certain things. They're going to see um, a person get polymorphed or something. They want to see someone turn into a sheep. They want to see or hear the familiar sound effects. They want to see the characters that they've interacted with in the game they've been obsessively playing for years. And that
Yeah.
all that stuff gets in the way of just telling a story.
And every time they like, they talk to like a worker orc in the movie and the worker orc is like, something you doing? Then just like immediately aware you're watching a movie.
Right. Absolutely.
And it just puts you out. Like that's
Yeah.
what bothered me a lot about the Star Trek movies, the reboots that a lot of people really enjoyed, is like how often that happened when they would just do some classic Star Trek quote. And it's not cool. It's just like, oh, I'm really aware I'm watching a reboot of Star Trek now.
And that's what bothered me about that The Force Awakens as well. I think The Force Awakens worked as a movie on its own before all the old cast members start getting thrown in. And as soon as the old cast members start getting thrown in, then you're just constantly referencing old things, and like you're feeding off of nostalgia, and that's when everything falls apart. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
you should always avoid, like, it's enough, like, you don't have to do that once you've gotten someone into the movie theater. Like, the whole reason this works is, like, you've made the movie about the thing people like, so you've already gotten them to go see it. You don't have to, like, try to pander to that during the movie, because no one really, I think, actually appreciates that.
Yeah, and it really diminishes the like rewatchability value, because a lot of these movies, like the first time I see them, I'm like, ha, yeah, I remember that, and then every subsequent time I see it, I'm like, oh yeah, the surprise of this is gone now. Like,
one of the most grown-inducing examples of this is the "I'm the Juggernaut" bitch from the X-Men.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
which was like a very limited in time, like cultural internet, like viral video reference, which was stupid.
I bet you they thought they were so excited when they came up with putting that in.
Yeah. I mean, like it almost seems like what you guys are implying or saying is that like a Space Invaders movie would actually have the best potential for being a great movie, because for Space Invaders, all that's required is that there be Space Invaders, pretty much.
Yeah.
And you can make practically any movie you want based around this premise. You could completely make up your whole cast of characters.
Adam Sandler did that, and it was called Pixels.
Yeah, I mean,
well, okay. Adam Sandler aside.
I think it's just stupid to try to make movies out of video games. It's like, what's the point?
Yeah, I mean, we can say that, but we also live in a world in which studios are so risk averse that they are not interested in original IP. They want something that people know and are comforted with.
That's true, but like it's failed time and time again. Like almost all these video game movies have like resulted in losses for the company. So it's not safe. Like they think it's going to be safe because people are familiar with the source material, but like because they've all been bad, like it's not safe anymore. Everyone knows video game movies are bad now.
Yeah, so what would it, I mean, do you think let's play in a world in which Warcraft was somehow an amazingly constructed movie that was beautiful, got like a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes. Is that enough to get people that have never played the game, have no interest in video games, the people that you need to get in order to make sure your movie is profitable? Is that enough to bring them to the table?
I don't think so. I mean, like people like my sister, for instance, and like loads of people who are just turned off by the idea of video game things because they think it's nerdy or whatever. And I think it's always going to alienate a large portion of people once they know it's a video game movie.
But wouldn't you think in this world where nerds have won the culture war and everything that was nerdy is now the most popular things in the world, why has that not affected video games yet, or at least the video game film?
I don't know. I mean, I think it has started to affect video games a little bit. The video game film, it hasn't affected just because there's simply never been a good one. So people have no reason to trust it. Like people who don't play video games, if someone convinces them to watch a video game movie, it's only going to confirm their belief that everything video game is shit.
Yeah, and plus I think like part of the way in which nerds have won the culture war is through like volume and advertising, like the enormous number of superhero movies we've had over the last 5 years or however long it's been. It's almost like if you're the type of person who thinks that superheroes are for nerds, then like you're just SOL, because every time you go to the movie theater, one of the like two options is a superhero movie. So eventually you just give in. Whereas it's actually relatively rare for a video game movie to come out, and often they're really bizarre, like the Battleship movie, which technically wasn't a video game, but equally nonsensical and in terms of why would you make this?
Yeah. So we're getting a Tetris Trilogy, which will be a high budget sci-fi trilogy of movies. Yeah, that is a thing that is happening.
I mean, why? Who are these people who think this is a good idea? Like
that's honestly what I can't figure out, because like going back to Warcraft, someone had to sit down and say, yes, we think it will be a successful enough concept to put $150 million in budget and then probably equal that or more in worldwide marketing.
Yeah, I'm surprised of all people Blizzard made this mistake because they are usually at least in their video games, they're very aware of how to appeal to people, how to make clean, appealing video games that do all of the right things for specific genres and get people to like and play it. And so it's surprising that they have decided with all of their powers of analysis that this was a good idea to make this movie.
And that makes me I wonder if to Blizzard this isn't something that's set out to be a profitable venture on its own. I wonder if it's a very expensive advertising tool.
A loss leader.
Because Disney, I mean, as much money as the Marvel movies make, Disney makes these movies because it makes billions of dollars in merchandising. That's why Disney makes these Marvel movies. The movies do well enough to fund themselves, etc. But Disney's real buy-in on all this stuff is I get to make toys and sell toys. Maybe Blizzard's real buy-in is we think this will either A, bring people back to the game, or B, get people talking about Blizzard IPs again. I mean, they just launched a new game. There's a new Warcraft expansion coming out soon. Maybe that's what they see this as.
Maybe, but I can't see it being I mean, they've already spent a lot of money marketing Overwatch. Like, there have been advertisements for that game everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's had a pretty good release already. And I mean, they've already got a good enough reputation in the game world that they're going to sell all their new games really well.
I mean, Scott, your analysis tempts me to predict that this movie is going to be a good business decision for them. Like, the movie itself may not break even in the box office. Then again, it may. Maybe their market research has shown that it will. But I think, like you say, I think that maybe they're just saying, you know, they've done their focus groups or whatever, and they're like, hey, it turns out that 84% of former WoW players are going to watch this movie, and 53% of those are going to restart their subscriptions, and that by itself makes us $100 million a year. And I don't know, I'm obviously making things up, but like I don't think they would have done this if they didn't expect a tidy profit from it.
Right, like if they can go to like a quarterly board meeting and say, WoW subscription numbers were X before the movie came out, now after the movie came out they're Y, and we attribute this growth in subscription numbers entirely to the movie, then that makes investors happy. That from a business standpoint, that could accomplish everything maybe they want it to. Which I know we're completely destroying the whole art of this whole thing right now by having this conversation. But I mean, this is things that studios and businesses think about when they go into this stuff.
Yeah, it might be. I don't think, like, WoW is kind of dying. It's still got a fair amount of subscribers.
I mean, it is dying, but it's still a very profitable venture.
It's
for them
still
at
a
the
very
same
profitable
time.
thing, but I don't know. I mean, it's not exciting anymore. It's been around for so long, and I don't know. It seems like this would be kind of a desperate attempt to renew interest in it, and it would be a very short-lived interest because people would just get tired of it.
You know what I would do if I were them? I would say if you buy a ticket to our movie opening weekend, you get a free limited edition Hearthstone card. Like,
yeah,
I think I don't like that game is making money for them hand over fist. So I don't know. I think maybe I was thinking of this thing as just a successful venture as a movie on its own, but now that we've kind of looked at the big picture, I think maybe that was part of the plan all along.
It might be, and that might be the reason they make any of these video game movies. I don't know, but it seems clear that almost none of them are made with, like, from a person who has a great idea for a film and wants to make a great film. Like, it's never made for that reason.
Yeah, no, I mean, no one comes with a script and says, I have this amazing idea for an Assassin's Creed game.
Yeah, I've always dreamed of making the Assassin's Creed movie.
and then Ubisoft says, yes, let's do it. We weren't going to do it before, but because you brought us a script. No, you're absolutely right. They say, I want to make a movie, then they commission someone to write a script, and then they probably toss half the script out and are making rewrites while they're shooting because that's how they do with these kind of movies.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a Hollywood person, but it seems to me like any movie that's made with the like, we're going to make this movie, someone write the screenplay for this rather than, you know, a screenplay writer who like has this great vision and then like sends his screenplay out to like solicit people to make the movie. Like the latter approach seems like it would be the one that would always work. Like I don't see like anyone operating creatively well where they're just like, okay, write the Warcraft movie.
I think you can, but I think you're right that I think you're starting from behind if that's the approach to it.
Right.
And it's going to take a really good writer and someone who's really passionate, which I was hoping was Duncan Jones, because when he got this gig, he seemed really passionate about the project and he wanted to construct this good movie. It doesn't seem like it's going to be the case. None of us have seen it because we're recording this in the past. It's not out yet. But yeah, the Assassin's Creed movie is coming out in November, which also happens to be right around the time that Ubisoft's annual Assassin's Creed game drops. So again, that's more evidence that they're doing this just to promote their games.
Yeah.
We're getting a Division movie now. I can't remember. I think that's Ubisoft as well. The Division was a game that came out this year. Jake Gyllenhaal is starring in that one. He likes to work with Ubisoft because I think he was in the Prince of Persia movie.
Yeah.
Did any of you see that one? I never saw that one.
No. It looked, I think it was
It
pretty
looked really terrible. Also, Jake Gyllenhaal playing a Persian is hilarious.
Yeah. That's funny.
All right, so, and I actually hadn't thought of how to conclude this thing because I'd like for us to declare which one of these is the best, but we can't really do that because I think we're all going to vote for ours. Have any of you been convinced to vote for another one?
Well, so the problem here is that you guys both picked actually good movies by some standard. So by rights, I should switch off from my movie, but the thing is, I've been thinking about this while we were talking, and I can't decide which of Silent Hill or Final Fantasy I liked more because there were definitely problems with both of them. I am tempted to go for the Silent Hill one, except for the like massive flag in pacing and so forth that it experiences toward the end, where it just stops and explains everything. So no, I'm going to stick with Mortal Kombat.
All right. So I would love to just be able to toss this to the audience and have them make the decision, but unfortunately, we don't yet have a responsive enough audience to guarantee.
I think we should leave it to the comments. Everyone votes in the comments.
That would be great if people would comment.
Yeah.
If you have been stirred enough to participate in this vote, please leave comments on this article. Or do we want to say we can email us at dailyplanetfilms@gmail.com if you're listening on iTunes and can't comment.
It's honestly probably easier to comment.
Well, a lot of people listen to this on iTunes and not on the website, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you can tweet at us at Daily Planet Films.
At Daily Planet Films. And if you want to vote for an entirely different of our three movies, you can do that too. But yeah, so what is the best video game movie? I still think it's Final Fantasy.
I mean, I after this conversation, I think I should have gone with the Super Mario Brothers movie because that would have been more fun to talk about.
That movie is so bad.
What the fuck?
That is such a bad movie.
It has like nothing to do with the Mario Brothers either. Like how did it?
Well, that one's actually interesting to talk about simply because it has nothing to do with the Mario Brothers. Like they were like, well, we have a character named Mario and his brother Luigi, and they're plumbers, and then there's interdimensional time traveling dinosaurs who were going to make a vague gesture toward that being related to King Koopa, and Princess Daisy is a hyper evolved dinosaur, and then this other dinosaur over here is Yoshi, and this weird looking dinosaur for some reason is
a Goomba,
like a Goomba, even though Goombas are mushrooms, I'm pretty sure.
And also, the king of the land is a giant fungus that's growing all over the place.
Yeah.
Such a bad movie.
It's nonsense.
I love this movie, but Also, Kit Harington's first movie credit was in Silent Hill Revelation.
Really? Huh.
Just to cap off that discussion.
Red stars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad he got out of there alive and has a career.
Yeah, for now.
All right, so I think we'll wrap it up for the week then. Like we were saying, please participate and vote and let us know what you think. And if you see Warcraft and you think it's the best video game movie ever, let us know too. Do you guys know that the second highest rated Rotten Tomatoes video game movie is the Angry Birds movie?
It doesn't
Did
surprise
that
me.
ever come out?
It just came out like a week ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, new movies always get a boost of like Rotten Tomato score edge.
I suppose. The movie had pee jokes in it. I don't understand.
Yeah, classic.
It's very successful with its target audience.
There you go. All right, so Michael, thanks for being here and nominating your movie. I kind of want to revisit Silent Hill now and at least see if your argument has some sort of merit. I still think my movie's better though. And Matt, you're definitely wrong.
I think
entirely.
Like you said, both movies are bad, but I do think Silent Hill did some things right, which is more than you can say for most of the video game movies.
Yeah, that's definitely fair.
Yeah.
Cool. So Michael, you don't exist on the internet because you're a anonymous, off the grid type of person, right? So we can't.
Yeah, I can't let the government know
Yeah, of
my
course.
name.
Don't you work for a public university?
Don't tell people that. my biggest fear now is that like you'll one day develop an audience, Scott, and students will like find these.
Oh my god, that'd be hilarious. All right, so Matt, where can you be found on the internet?
Twitter at More Than a Mail.
Cool. I am also at Twitter at ScottDaly85. It's DALY. And like we said, you can tweet us at Daily Planet Films. You can email us at dailyplanetfilms@gmail.com. And you can read all of our writing at dailyplanetfilms.com. And if you could please review this podcast, share it, subscribe. I don't know if there's a like feature. All I know is the iTunes version, so I don't know what other platforms let you do. But if you can do things with the podcast, do them. And if you want to support us in our ventures, you can support us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/dailyplanetfilms. Right, Matt?
That's right.
Sweet. Like we said last week, that's just a way if you want to help support what we're doing here. Some of the stuff costs money to host. Every dollar and cent we get will go back into the website. So that's all we had this week. Matt, I don't think we have anything planned for next week because next week is still technically 2 weeks away. We're recording this early because I'm on vacation next week. But we will plan something and it will be awesome.
Yep.
And Michael, thanks again for joining us.
Happy to come as always.
And we will see you next week.
Podcast is over, it's done. We hope you all had some fun. Go back to your work or your school, maybe the gym. Hey, that's cool. Regardless, just go away. But please come back next Friday, there'll be